Joseph Campbell wrote, "The creative act is not hanging on, but yielding to a new creative movement. Awe is what moves us forward." When the whole world came to a halt, we misplaced our awe. We watched conditions improve, our friends and colleagues finding their new creative movements, while our efforts remained focused on personally important matters, caring for ill and aging loved ones. Amidst those difficulties, the loss of Avalon Studios, our home for more than 25 years. We were hanging on, but determined to find the movement and the flow, to be in awe again. Art and creativity are expressions born from inspiration, interest, insight, emotion, and sometimes by way of necessity. It came to pass that I needed to move some old paint cans from storage. I'd been told the easiest way to dispose of such things was to pour the paint onto a tarp, let it dry out, and then it would be safe and ready for the dump. I hadn't expected to be hit with inspiration in those moments, as I watched the stuff merge and mingle, shape-shifting into dreamy abstracts and otherworldly landscapes. I ran for my camera, and then yielded to the creative movement. Out of dark comes light, out of struggle, hopefully achievement. We found the flow and our misplaced awe by letting go of the old, to make room for the new exhibit.
I can't tell if that's synced up or not.
I don't really.
Not.
I don't really think I was playing it right.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
Hey.
guys. Oh, my God.
I got
Happy-
choked up watching that, Jen. That was really
You
cool.
what?
I got choked up watching that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Welcome, everybody. It's not really an Outside the Inn. It's a CD release party. And
Yay.
we don't seem to know how to do anything in the same room anymore. So it looks like an Outside the Inn. But it's actually storming like crazy outside today. And they had the schools shut down. And, so it's a good time to be inside. And just for everybody watching, know that Jen and I already talked about our iPhones are charged and ready to go. So if the power goes out, we're still going to be here. We're going to come back. We're going to have candles. We're going to have our little iPhones. It'll probably be
Right.
like an awkwardly close-up shot of our, like our face.
Right.
But anyway, that's what's going to happen. look at all these familiar faces that we have
I
not
know.
seen
Hi,
in a long time.
everybody.
Stormer, Vicky, Glenn,
Glenn, John
Cooper,
Kenny.
Hey.
John Kenny, I
Narduli.
was wearing your T-shirt yesterday. Joe Narduli, Mario, Chuck. Joe Narduli, we were talking about a bunch yesterday on a radio show that I did on Long Island. And we were praising Joe Narduli. What's that?
Captain Fantastic.
Captain Fantastic, yes.
Inside.
So we're here because we're, as the kids say, we dropped a new record today.
Woo.
Jen Majura. Sorry.
Is Jen Majura here?
What?
Doesn't she know it's 9 hours ahead?
Or, well, someone with the
That's-
gall to act like her.
That's like 4 a.m. in Germany.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. The good
Honorable shout out to Jen Majura for being a supportive entity behind this whole thing. So they've changed a whole bunch of stuff about this StreamYard. It seems like so far we've pulled off a fairly professional intro. We do have some stuff set up, so as we talk about these things, and we have some special guests also coming later. One that you would expect to be here, and one that would be kind of a surprise, but people that worked on the record with us. So stick around for that. If you get tired of listening to us for the first, 45 minutes or an hour, then there'll be much more interesting people coming on. So it's going to be fantastic.
I'm enjoying Dale's name, Dale. Going French?
I did that the other day when Travis and I were doing a gear check, and then it occurred to me, oh, that's how it's going to go out there.
Nice.
Well, when we tour to Europe next year,
Right.
it'll fit right in because you'll be like Dale Moon.
Yes,
Dale.
yes.
I'm not sure what part of Europe that comes from, but it sounds like it comes from Europe to a dumb guy like me. I've been watching a lot of Rocky this week, by the way.
It sounds like Dale's vocal could come up a little bit to my ears.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. Is that a disagreement?
So, okay, here I go. I'm talking a little more. How's that?
That's a little better.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll probably get more loud and excited later.
Right.
I see Eric Davis. Let's honorable mention to Ad Astra.
Yay.
Great band in New York that when we go back to New York, I'm sure we'll be playing.
Good
Jen
Dalai
says
Lama joke.
Majura, we could just call her the German since both Jens are here. The German says for her first release party of the
Party of the
century.
Ooh. It's still early in the century, so we'll see how that turns out.
Right. So everybody out there, if you're just happening upon this live stream, we just released a record. It's called The New Exhibit. We just showed the video trailer of it, and we've been working on this since I think the first project that I opened for this was right after the Aristocrats tour in 2019. It was around October. And I opened my first Pro Tools project to start writing song ideas for this album. And so with the incredible speed and, mental
Capacity.
capacity that I have, yes. We are in, what is it? March 2023.
The new century.
Yes. So, but we're really excited about it. We've kind of done everything different on this record. We changed a lot of stuff. We still have the same people with us, but we changed. We had lost our studio in the pandemic. We had gone through a pandemic, like many of you people, which is how we all met here in this cyber world. And so it was a bit of a struggle making this record. It took a little longer than normal. Usually we would kind of hammer out a record with about just 8 months of solid work. It's kind of been the history of TLB, and then we would spend 2 years touring on it. And this is the longest we've ever gone in the history of this band without coming out with an album. And I can honestly say, in my opinion, that I'm as satisfied and proud of it as I've ever been with anything that we've ever done. It sounds sonically better than anything we've ever done, my opinion. And so I'm glad, I'm glad that it didn't suck since we waited 7 years.
That would have been a bummer.
7 years. So I was going to just, I know Jen's got a list of stuff to keep us going, but I wanted to have a few honorable mentions here before we, get too deep into the album making process. When we were making the record, anybody that kind of keeps up with us online, one of our extended TLB family, who, when you look into the album sleeve, when you get a copy of the actual physical disc, which you should all do because, we all still want to cut trees down and hold cardboard in our hands. I think in this case, it's an okay thing to do. But we had a couple of guys that have been touring with us for years. Yeah, it's even I don't even know, a decade and a half, something like that. And we affectionately named them. Well, we didn't name them this, but we started calling them the Harris Boys. And I think neither one of them is watching right now. I'll explain that in a second. But Mrs. Harris, I believe, is watching. So shout out to Mrs. Harris. Or,
She knows.
I think she knows who she is.
Yeah.
So Tom Harris and Steve Harris, if you've been to a gig in the last decade of ours, especially on the West Coast at least, you may have met these guys. Tom passed away several months ago, and we lost him kind of right when we were doing the final stages of recording, and we were kind of really. Not that we were hurrying, but we were really hoping he was going to get to hear it. And so we just kind of hope he's hearing it from somewhere up in the stratosphere. But I'm going to just show this if the technology works properly so everybody recognizes Tom. He was our Santa Claus. So Tom is on the right there. And whenever you've seen our Christmas ads that we put up where Santa Claus is wearing a Travis Larson Band shirt, that's Tom. And then Steve Harris is his son behind him. And these guys are the size of mountains. They're like giant men. And they basically, what I have always called them jokingly, is they're like aggressive friends. They decided they were going to be friends, and they were friends. And we've ended up spending tons of time together. Tom supported us as much as anybody has, just on the road, selling merch for us, buying meals, putting us up when we went through his town, all that kind of stuff. Huge supporters of this band and became family. So God bless Tom, and we'll miss him, and he's always here with us. So also, Tom wouldn't be happy if I didn't mention this. We lost another member of the family. I'm not trying to bring everybody down, so I'm doing it all now. And that way, when we get into later on, we can end on a high note with our guests and everything. But another member of the family that was hanging out with us while we were tracking the album and has been with us for about a decade or more. I was going to try and put in several pictures here, and Tom would completely appreciate this because Tom is a dog guy. But this is Miss Chloe. And Chloe here is sitting in the studio under her little blankie, which matches Chloe. And Chloe was basically in here making sure we did a good job, the entire making of the record. So Chloe and Tom are up there keeping each other company, and the album sounds amazing, and it's probably because of some good energy from Chloe and Tom. So anyway, there you go. Just wanted to have a couple of honorable shout-outs to our dearly departed supporters while we were making this album. So talk a bit about the record. I think we've all heard the title track enough, so I won't play any snippets of that. But the title track, I'm going to just tell a little bit about the track, and then I'm going to let Jen kind of take it for a while because she really is in charge of the visually creative part of our band, and the basically anything doesn't only involve notes. She kind of handles as far as song titles, kind of a direction of what the songs are bringing to mind. As far
She's the reason you're holding something in your hands.
yeah, exactly. Right. So so the new exhibit, the intro to that song, sounding very, very formal, and then the rest of the song kind of more this down and dirty, kind of a funky thing. And it wasn't originally going to be even a song that was early in the record. Not my initial idea anyway. It was kind of more of a B-side, but it ended up kind of fitting the whole idea of what we were doing with the titles and the artwork and the image of the album so well that it ended up being the title track. But my perception is a little bit of, you guys saw the video with Jen spilling the paint and then taking pictures of all this paint and creating beautiful art out of it. And then if you look inside the CD, the actual disc is the top of a paint can. So you guys, when you get your CD, you can check that out. But the idea that you're kind of, when you're making art, it's kind of a mess. And then when you're presenting art, it's kind of a very formal thing. And so the idea that the song opens with this sort of formal string orchestration and then turns into what you would expect from us sort of worked for that. But you want to talk a little bit about the visual creative ideas you came up with, Jen, and the ideas behind why you titled things the way you did and those kind of things?
Well, as stated in the video that you showed, there was a lot of concepts behind the new exhibit. One of them being that we had taken so long and so to come out with something new. And so that seemed appropriate almost as like a new presentation, like here is the new thing. And yeah, it's been a while. Also, as we talked about conceptually with the whole artwork that just came out of nowhere. I needed to get rid of some old paint, basically make room for something new. And out of that came an idea and a concept artistically. And it felt like to me throughout all of the pandemic and all of that stuff, everyone was in such a weird place. And I was ready to move on from that old stale and stuck feeling and move on to some newer, more appropriate emotions about everything. So getting rid of the old to make room for the new was sort of the concept in my head. And the new exhibit was also saying, yes, this is the new thing. Yeah, it took a while, but we got rid of the old stuff. And here's the new presentation from that was how it was going on in my head.
And you always seem to come up with the perfect title idea for the song. But I was going to say, continuing about what musically, when I started this album, what I was inspired by.
Can I butt in for just 1 second?
You can. And I was working towards you, just so you don't think we're ignoring
No.
you.
No. It's just that I wanted to say, Jen, your story about that, seeing that, throwing stuff out was making a cool design. I've told a couple of people about that. And it just really, in my mind, is it fits so much of what you do, where the impressive part of that to me, besides making the art out of it, is recognizing that it was cool in the first place. You know what I mean? I feel like you play this role in our band of ideas flying around all the time, and you'll be the one going, that one, or if I'm going for 79 takes, you'll be like, I think you peaked at like 12. I think that was when the feel was the best. So the recognizing is impressive to me. People who are good with cameras and everything visual, one part is the gear and one part is just spotting it. So anyway, sorry, Trav, I wanted to just.
I think that happens too in just even our hangs. You guys, I mean, that's really where all of the titles and things come from, is you guys will just talk about things and say things, and I'll go, oh, write it down. oh, write it down. And,
Yeah.
like goofy words, goofy phrases, things like that, or just even concepts. So it is sort of a picking thing. I always considered myself a facilitator, not so much a creator, but yeah, the grabbing out of the air of stuff other people are creating and jotting it down, as it were,
Yep.
so that it can be used. Because the artists, they're always spouting off artistic things. Travis and you will say things or do things. I'm like, oh, that's neat. So,
Yep.
thank
The German says hashtag Team Jen, by the way. But so let me say, Jen, in response to that you say you're facilitating creatives by grabbing things out of the air and all this, but that's exactly what creatives do.
you.
As you know,
That's what you do, right?
we talk about Eric Johnson a lot because he's a guy to me that sounds exactly like himself, and he thinks from the many times I've heard him talk about his influences and how transparent he feels like they are. He's like, well, it's just Clapton and Hendrix and maybe some Chet Atkins mixed in or whatever, but it's like Eric Johnson sounds like nobody else, right? And so everybody's grabbing inspirations from
Right.
out of the air, and so you are creative, and it's just a matter of what part of that gets exercised the most and
Right.
kind of honed. But yeah, it's very lucky for Dale and I that somebody has made it cooler as the years have gone on, visually and title wise.
Totally.
Because in the beginning, I have to explain to people when I start writing music, the music itself is not the scientific part, but my keeping track of it, I don't want to be bothered with it. So literally, song 1 is called song 1, and song 2 is called song 2. And then it gets completely confusing, because we start running this stuff by our friends, like I still, when I'm talking to the German, for instance, I will say, I'll say a song, and she'll be like, well, is that song 5 on the record or song 5 when you were writing them?
Right. Yeah.
Like, which song 5 are we talking about right now?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's just kind of funny because
That screwed me up in Mixdown.
totally, right? So without somebody kind of facilitating that and keeping track of it and making it, something that's cool and interesting, it would be really, really sterile.
I think the next album, though, we should just call them all song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4.
Well, that would be like, do you guys remember there was that Dave Matthews album where they had like song 41 or whatever it was, and there was
Yes.
like all these little teeny pieces of it. But I'm thinking, maybe we just call the next album 11.
Well, we have to wait till our 11th album for that one.
Right. Well, yeah, there's a band that did that too. I don't remember who they were,
Oh,
though.
all right. Well,
So what I was going to mention, though, was my initial inspiration. So every Travis Larson Band record has the obvious elements that, again, the influences, the 3 big ones, at least for me, and I think mostly for you guys, and for Jen. Jen and I grew up together, was Rush, right? Steve Morris, and sorry, my brain's not working. I know these bands, and
and that other band that I
and-
love to death.
and the great Jeff Beck, who we also recently lost. But those are kind of, I'm influenced by all kind of stuff, but those are always in there. You're always going to find a song where, if you're a huge Steve Morris or Dregs fan, you're going to find something on one of our albums where you're like, well, that's very Dregsy, or that's very Steve Morris-ish. But on this last record, there is all that, of course. But the thing that we've always had a little element of is this kind of Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock thing. A little element, tiny one, where maybe I've had a little bit of some electric piano in the mix and some jazz chords here and there, things like that, all come from when I was growing up. And I've talked about this before. It was an era where I was able to actually see on television music, real music. And I watched the Merv Griffin show when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and saw Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea on the Merv Griffin show, if you guys can believe that out there. And it's just not like that anymore. You know, you don't see those kinds of musicians on television. And so that was actually the first instrument I played, as most people know, was a keyboard. And I got my, 71 Mark IV Rhodes 88, I think that's what it is, which is right over here. And I still have it. And so that's always a little bit in there. And so this record, I was kind of, I went with a friend of mine and saw Herbie Hancock right before the pandemic as well. And I'd never seen him live. I have the records and I'm a huge fan, but I never saw him live. And I went and saw him with Vinnie Colaiuta and on drums. And so it was just slamming. And they were doing this stuff where, of course I've heard the Headhunters do this, but they're playing these grooves and they're just like kind of in it. And then all of a sudden, these crazy unison sections of just madness would pop out where the whole band is playing together. And then all of a sudden, back to the groove. And nobody looked at each other. It was like a magic trick. And I was looking at these guys. And another band that I'd seen do that back in the day, Jen and I went and saw Bella Fleck and the Flecktones when they were doing and then there were 3 tour, I think it was, or something along those lines, around the time that Victor played on one of our albums. And they did a same thing with a song where they were grooving. All of a sudden, these little like things would fly out of the musical abyss, and they were playing this craziness. And I was like, okay, we need to do some fusiony or influence stuff just for this record of what that part of my DNA is. And so there was some stuff I really worked really hard on, and I'm using this joke all week long, and I'm going to keep using it. But I saw Phil Collins said once about Genesis. He goes, Genesis would be such a great band if we had just a little more talent.
Right.
And so these are the songs where I feel like that, but just, working really, really hard to do some cool stuff like that. So I'm just going to play a snippet of the second song. I'm going to say song 2 on the album, but not compositionally song 2.
I think it actually is compositionally song 2 as well. But
Actually, that's true.
what's the title, though?
This is called And Then, because as you're listening to it, you're kind of going, and then what? And then what's going to happen? So just a piece of this, which for those that haven't got the album yet, I'm just on the TravisLarsonBand.com on the samples, the song samples, like literally right now, just playing that for you. But this is a little bit of And Then.
Hey, Wyatt Lund.
So that's kind of the vibe I was going for, and it just gets into more chaotic stuff from there on out. But the idea that, and then of course in true Travis Larson Band fashion, which is, this would be kind of the Jeff Beck in the DNA of you have to write a really cool melody that's simple over the top. And so that's why you guys end up always working live usually much harder than I do, because I have to write all this crazy stuff and then I have to have it listenable and musical so that people will actually enjoy it. It's not just math. And you guys are the ones who have to learn all the hard stuff. That's the great part for me live. So I was going to bring up with that. Yeah, I was going to say, so that leads us to when we're getting ready to work on these records, Dale is in, because he's the guy that has to like really deliver this stuff, being the drummer. I mean, we all have to get our parts right, but like the drummer, as people know, like he's the engine. And so he goes into his studio and practices until like the wee hours for months, trying to get these parts down and get to the point where first he can like perform them for the record, and then later on, once all that's out of his head again, relearn them for live and actually put the pieces together. But if you want to talk a little bit about how you wrap your mind around stuff like that, Dale, because it's for me, it's, I'm just, I'm the one mapping it out. But to hand it to somebody, I don't actually know what that is. I know when I've tried to learn other stuff, it's really hard, like drag songs and things like that.
It's nice of you to say that it's hard work for drummers and all that stuff, but I think really I'm just at a baseline that's further from being able to do it than you guys are. I just work really hard. Yeah, you know what? First of all, it's interesting to hear this song removed from all the struggle of doing it. It just flows, and it's fun to hear that. It actually sounds light, and you guys might be feeling that way too, where you know how hard you worked to do something, and then when you're separated from it for a little while, you can actually hear how it comes across without thinking of how hard it was. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they don't end up being that hard. It was just a hard process to get there. So to your question, Trav, like there's things that, well, as a drummer, I'm just going to speak that way. There's certain grooves that show up all over the place, and there's little ways that you fill in and make it sort of, I don't want to say cliches, but there's a vocabulary, sort of a fusion-y things that drummers do, and you'll learn, you copy other drummers, and they all work. And then I feel like this song is a good example of starting from a place like that, and then just in the composition process, you'll take a demo and move a kick a 16th here and move a snare a 16th there, and it's really cool, but none of the connective stuff works anymore. There's no longer a vocabulary that I know that does this, and this groove is a perfect example. I listened to it, and it sounds great, but I feel like I had to start from scratch to learn how to play that. In fact, I remember a part where I heard the demo and went, well, I get what he's saying, but obviously he doesn't want, a drummer would never do that. I'm going to do something that a drummer would do. And then, and it'll be like, oh, cool. Thanks for making it sound. And you guys are both like, well, no, what happened to the other groove? And I'm like, right. and then I started trying to figure out how that got done. And I came up with a different thing. I might be confusing this with a different song too, but it happened in this one a little bit. So anyway, it feels like you end up starting from scratch, working really hard to create a thing. And then when you get done, it sounds like something that shouldn't have been that hard.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, that was a long answer.
I know what you mean.
But to be honest with you, I hear that, and it makes me satisfied that I'm like, oh yeah, I can play that groove now. Like right. I wouldn't have known how to begin before, and now it's something I know how to do.
Yeah.
So that part's rewarding.
Well, cool. To be able to sift through some of that stuff, and I'm actually live performance wise, I'm a little ahead of you guys because I just went and did that gig with Tony Levin where I played 3 of these songs for the first time.
Nice job, by the way.
And this was one of them, and it's for me, it's like playing through it so many times, and even after you've done it 100 times, and then even after you do a gig of it, you're still finding the spots that you don't quite have. It's like for people that don't play music, you're creating like a muscle memory, and the only way to do that is to play this stuff 100 times. But the thing is, it's not like one movement 100 times. It's like a 3 or 4 minute piece, and that's conservative. It could be 5 or 10 minute piece, and you're doing that 100 times. So it's so time consuming to get this stuff under your fingers, but you have to do that in order to get to the point where you could feel it and you're actually playing music. You're not just trying to execute parts and tight and struggling. You're actually feeling it and able to like let it flow. So it's a lot of work, and nobody does more of that in this band than Dale, as far as trying to get that stuff together. So
hey Dale, as we go along and talk about each of these tunes, and hopefully we can get to them all, can you mention if they are in odd time signatures? Jen Majura asked if any tunes were in 11, 7, 9, things like that.
Yeah.
You don't have to think of them now, just as we go.
Cool.
And then in a weird time signature? Because, as good musicians, we have no idea.
It's funny how I don't have a response to that right away, but okay. I will.
Well, we can watch you count it out.
It goes like, yes.
You know what? I remember this now. It's
Let me mention
I-
really quick in my notes. I
Uh-huh.
Don't
usually
forget,
kind of
Dale.
write down time signatures, and I
Yeah.
think on this one or one of them, I just wrote yes next to it because I couldn't figure out what it was.
Uh,
Is it time signature? Yes.
I could say this wrong, so I hope I don't. But I think it ends up being just in like 8, but it's kind of 5 and 3, you know. But
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
it's so it's not odd. But I had to an early version of this. I was counting it much faster. Like I think it was
Right.
5, 5, and 6. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it just became 5, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so
Right.
I think that's
Right.
my answer. There's a middle ground of this band of 4/4 stuff that we make complicated, complex stuff that we make try to sound simple, and then there's this murky area where technically it's 4, but you don't really.
But it has a
Great.
pulse and a 5 and a 3 thing.
Yeah.
The Jim Majura says 8 with a question mark, and Stephanie responds with 5 plus 3 equals 8. This is
Yes.
so much. And let me just point out, for a prog audience, the 2 women are the ones doing the math.
Yes. Right.
I don't know. It's confusing to me. So
Okay, next tune, dude.
are we going through them all? I was just going to jump around, but
No, well, we're gonna try.
okay. All right. Okay.
Does
Well, Tricks Are
everyone
for.
want to know?
I'm getting a lot of Tricks Are for Kids is my favorite song via the feedback. Tricks Are for Kids is the next tune on the album, and that is basically, we don't have to talk long about it, but it's basically it's disguised because I did a bunch of B3 on it. When you put B3 on complicated patterns, it sounds like prog, but it's really my Eddie Van Halen homage. It's just a straight ahead rocker. The lick I'm going to show you right now because it's the easiest thing in the world. It's stupid, and
You always go too
sometimes
far. Just because it's not that hard for you and you think it's derivative.
No,
of
no,
something doesn't mean
sometimes-
it's not good.
no, but here's the thing. Sometimes as guitar players, we write stuff that would be easy to play for ourselves, and also because if kids out there see something that they think is cool and can learn it,
Yeah.
then you're actually turning kids on to being interested in trying to maybe play an instrument, because some of the stuff is overwhelming. But this is basically, so I was trying to kind of do one of those cool little Van Halen trickery things without sounding like Van Halen, because I don't want to do something that sounds like Van Halen. Just, by nature of everybody does that. And I did that when I started out, but so it's just a tapping lick, right? It's like, let's see, 5th fret and 12th fret on, and so you're only doing that on the top 4 strings, and you're walking around. Let's see if I remember how to play it. And I also kind of ripped off the idea of having like a really simple but cool little lick from Vinnie Moore. He did one on a record a few years ago that it was just the 12th fret, and I don't know if I remember how to do it, but all he did was hammer on the 12th fret. It's the one finger cool guitar part where he was like, I forget what the lick was, but that was the idea, was come up with something really, really simple that I don't have to have too much concentration. Every once in a while, you need just fun rocker. Yep. And then the other sections, there's some sections that totally sounded like Cheap Trick to Jen and I, just quarterly, the
Play
progression.
the little snippet. Do the snippet thing.
And then I forget what else was in there, but there was some basic rock and roll influences. Tricks Are for Kids. This is the Foo Fighters section, right?
Right. This is the Cheap Trick section right there, and you can't hear it.
We cut out the cheap
Alright.
trick section, but
Got to pay for that.
yeah, that intro, the tapping intro, the melody stuff, that's just that's kind of straight ahead TLB sort of proggy melody over a driving bass line. But but the progressions that we came up with, we were trying to just make it a rock and roll song. So
And Tricks Are for Kids, the title. Obviously, anyone from our generation remembers the wonderful cereal Tricks and the marketing Tricks Are for Kids, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Tricks Are for
Bunny,
Kids.
all that stuff.
But the
So-
idea that it's a simple
It's
little
simple.
guitar trick,
Right. Yeah.
you know, and I'm just a punk kid who plays guitar, as Eddie used to say, right?
Tricks Are for Kids.
So
That's that one.
the next tune is
I told you that one wouldn't take long.
this is a Jen title for sure. But
Oh,
this
wow.
song is straight up like downtown LA 70s in the hood, Starsky and Hutch, heavy groove, and for some reason Jen called it Clown Town.
Let's hear it.
All right.
It's stupid.
I'm reading these quotes or the comments while we're going here, and I was cracking up. Alan said, Travis, love it when you turn your head to the left, reminding us that you haven't shaved your head.
And Stephanie's tricks are as old as Merv Griffin.
Yes.
Exactly.
True.
For anybody
Showing your
wondering,
age.
that is in 4. That is the 4iest 4 of all the 4s.
The 4th for. Okay, good.
That's probably the 4th of all the TLB records, right?
It might be. It might be.
And that's
Well,
just,
This song, yeah, it's just like, it's almost like what's off of Sound Mind, the Down on Victory. It's kind of a Down on Victory,
Oh yeah.
you know, just walking through the. So I had this is the title. This is how goofy this is sometimes. I always jot down things, and I had written down Crowtown. And you remember, you guys, I didn't have my glasses on, and I was reading. I'm like,
Crowtown. Crowtown?
Clowntown? What the hell is Clowntown? Because I misread my writing, and you guys all laughed, and everyone thought it was so hilarious. And so I'm like, oh, we're calling the song Clowntown. That's what
But Crowtown originally, because my house is surrounded by crows, probably, right?
I think this song has
That-
a certain Western. I was discussing this earlier. Western robot vibe to me that I just had this. I had a whole big movie thing going on in my head during this song, and
Gotcha.
Crowtown is what came out of it. But I read it wrong, and then I said Clowntown out loud, and that made everybody laugh. So
I remember thinking it was funny, and then within about a week, one of those sessions, me or Trav, one of us just, or you, well, one of us, somebody was talking about interacting with somebody who was just like, you know, what the fuck, what, this person saying this person that, and then you're just, and I feel like I was just like, Clowntown, man. Like,
Right,
but it
you
was
started
but it was
using it
sincere.
like
It was like it's already an idiom for me.
right, we were like, it's so Clowntown. I don't know. And
But I
this song
think-
does have like, if you imagine big scary clowns like chasing after you in the middle of, you know,
Yeah, it has that
Victory
big
Boulevard.
plotting feel.
Well, and here's just a backstory that doesn't have to do with the title, but works, which is I grew up, well, I didn't grow up, but for a time after I was born, I was very young, I lived on Victory Boulevard down in the San Fernando Valley in LA, which is not what it used to be. But it's, when I was growing up there even, it was a main street, and there were sirens on it every night. And my mom had painted pictures of clowns. Let that be a lesson to you moms. Don't put pictures of clowns up in your kid's room. It's just not a good thing. So I would wake up to this fire truck that would go up and down the street, and then I would end up like hearing those fire trucks in my sleep and have nightmares of clowns driving fire trucks trying to run me down. So they must have been from Clowntown,
they were from Clowntown. Yes,
right?
totally.
Mike says, does anyone like clowns? I don't think
I
so.
don't think so.
I don't think so.
right.
Okay, next track
Kaima.
is a song called Kaima. I'm just going to play it.
Okay.
just hearing snippets of these songs, that's obviously the chorus of the song.
Of course, yeah.
There's kind of a slow groove section in that song, but there's a couple elements in that song that remind me of a guy that we'll talk about again on the last song of the record. But maybe I'll just save it for then. But there's some stuff that's influenced by a friend of ours that we kind of grew up playing music with around here, and we'll get to that on the last tune. But I don't know. What do you got for Kaima? Anybody?
I have stuff.
Yeah,
Well,
tell us about it, Jen.
So, well, the chorus is not really
Representative.
Thank you, of where I was feeling with this song, but it's a great chorus. I love that melody, the groove, and a lot of the solos in that song are just so great. And this song always had this kind of exotic, almost I don't know. I used to feel like it was sort of an Asian thing, but it wasn't really that. Just exotic in a way. Like I had written down, Jasmine, Pacific, like just this sort of, I don't know what it was. Anyways, I ended up, Kaima is a Greek word for wave. And it's a very feminine song to me, at least that intro groove thing, the rest of the song. So Kaima means wave in Greek. And I just thought that was a pretty feminine, exotic sounding word. Turns out Kaima means keep your memories alive in people who use acronyms land. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So I thought it was fitting. And I think it's a beautiful song. I do love the chorus and the melodies, and it's just a really cool groove. And it's one of my favorite songs on the record. Especially all the piano stuff, the Bruce Hornsby piano. That was the original Bruce Hornsby, all that stuff.
Yeah. There's one piano lick in that song that's piano is not a focus, but it's part of the rhythm section on the record and in this song. And there's one part where it would go by every time we would listen to it, and Jen and I every time would be like, "Okay, everybody, there it is."
It's the best part. It's the best part of the record.
just one little lick.
Right.
Jen Majura says, "Exotic and Asian." No, the song is not about you.
Nice.
Yeah, we should have just called the song Jen Majura, right?
Right. Yes.
And beautiful and lovely and all of that stuff.
Talented. She loves it when you give her props. So
She does.
So talented, amazing singer.
Incredible. So I'll say this as fast as I can. This is the one song in the album that has the 16th note thrown beat.
Yeah.
That where you learn it, it doesn't do you any good to try to think of what time signatures it's in, but it's in the most sort of, it's probably what you're thinking of, Jen, is like, and you don't even notice it unless you try to play it, and then you're suddenly off and you don't know where it happened. And I remember learning that and getting a grip on it. And we've been through enough cycles of this that it was just humorous to me, because I was like, all right, so then you sort of, when that happens, you have to sort of choose where to leave the awkwardness on which side of it, I don't know how else to say it, but there's something leading up to it that has to be a little weird, something after it that has to be a little weird. And I remember thinking, in the process of making the song, I think Travis and you, Jen, as you help them arrange it, are like, yeah, well, we'll smooth that out later. But it always goes in the final tracking, like, yeah, but it's weird here. And then we fix that. Yeah, but it's weird here. And it goes back and forth a couple times. And I'm like, it's got to be weird somewhere. And you do your best to split the difference. And that is really smooth, that you don't notice it unless you are trying to play it. So that's okay. My own.
I remember that you were like, man, do you guys realize that there is a 16th note? And we went back and forth, and I'm like, well, let's just get rid of it then, or whatever. We were going to change the arrangement somehow.
Yeah.
But you somehow massaged it into place, such as you always do.
But then when you're really listening hard and you try to figure out how to split those hairs, you're just never sure if it's right. And then, but what I liked about it was it wasn't a frustrating thing. It was just like, yeah, this is the process we go through. I say this, you guys say it'll be fine, and then you go, wait, this is weird. We go through a couple cycles, and then we all land, and like, all right, that was it.
I'm sorry, Dale. When we're writing, we're always like, Dale will fix it. It'll be fine.
Let me just say,
I never want to sound like I'm complaining about that, because otherwise they wouldn't be cool parts. So
Let me just say hi to Andrew before he leaves. He's stuck at an
Yeah.
airport. He's literally, Andrew's the guy that I was meeting with the other night.
Oh,
Uh,
bye.
Oh, hey,
Andrew.
Andrew.
behind the
Travel
scenes
safe.
guy
Thanks for
for
entertaining
TLB.
Travis on your precious evening.
Yeah, behind the scenes guy for TLB, but he is on his way to South by Southwest right now and sitting in an
Nice.
airport and was able to squeeze in some of this. So that's awesome.
Okay.
So thanks
Cool.
for stopping by, Andrew.
safe.
We'll talk soon. We'll talk soon.
Anyway, yeah.
Thanks, Dale, for fixing that song. It's a good one.
I just thought it was interesting this time. Instead of being tense about it, it was like, no, this is how we do it. Bounces a couple times, then we all land.
Ah,
It's like growing.
Okay, one of the songs that we kind of suspected people would really like, and that has been the feedback, much like the sort of the more thoughtful song that people like versus Tricks Are for Kids, which is like the balls out rocker. But the more kind of, well, I don't even know if it's more thoughtful. It's just more exotic sounding.
I don't know. It's a rocker too.
Is Isle of Skye, the next track, which somebody earlier in the chat mentioned the acoustic intro to that, which is sort of, of course, my DNA, compositionally, the acoustic intro has sort of a Dixie Dregsy, Steve Morris-ish acoustic section type of vibe to it, but also an acoustic intro to this kind of big riff, epic song, and also some slide on this song, which I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do that live because I can't play slide guitar, but you can do anything in the studio. But this is really, to me, like our big Zeppelin song. That's the way I hear it. So let me play a little bit of Isle of Skye. I was looking around for my slide. I was going to put my slide on so it didn't look like I was flipping people
I know.
off.
You were just flipping everyone off.
Can't find it. I thought it was right here. So that was, in my mind, that song is very Jimmy Page. That's sort of like that part of the DNA that hasn't gotten through very much. Very, Jen Majura says classical gas for the, she's talking about the melody on the outro. She thinks has like a classical gas vibe. Diddle-a-diddle-a-doo, diddle-a-diddle-a-doo. But I hear it as just old school, big riff Led Zeppelin song with an acoustic intro. Like I guess it's our Stairway to Heaven.
Wow.
Not really. But an Isle of Skye, the concept for the title, I have no idea about, Jen. You have to explain that.
Well, okay, so during Mixdown, Travis laid so many layers of guitars at the end, harmonies. I don't even know what's going on there. And when you didn't have all the other instruments involved, it sounded like bagpipes very, very strongly in the slide. And remember that, Travis? You were there for some of that.
Yeah.
Bagpipe thing. I mean, I just was like, bagpipes. And so I was, yes, originally we were trying to find a title that sort of referenced Jimmy Page, but those seemed all very pretend. I don't know. They weren't working. So Isle of Skye is, it's a bagpipey title.
It's a bagpipey title.
Without being
So-
too bagpipey.
Are you saying I have to learn that by next Friday? Is that?
Oh, yeah, you should. Yeah,
Oh, right.
coming up on the bagpipey.
For those of you within driving
If you
distance,
play that section, though, it's just sounds like you're out in the green fields and kilts and the whole nine. So, Isle of Skye. And I spelled it wrong intentionally because I also was imagining, an island of sky. That's
Island
cool.
of Skye. An island of Skye is like what you see, like today, for instance,
Right.
when it's 100% rain, and then you get that one little circle of blue
Right.
in the sky. That's an island of Skye. Christine says, Travis, are you typing on a typewriter?
Clack, 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 clack.
Well, yes, I do have an old school keyboard in front of me because I like to hit things hard. And so that way it's easily replaceable and tough.
You're no Kip, but you bang up a keyboard.
I don't do the kind of damage to a keyboard that Kip does, but that's why we have to keep hurrying through these songs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Isle Sky. That's a good one.
Yep.
It's a favorite. That was almost the contender for the first song on the record. It ended up sort of being like song 1, side B. If you look at this as an album, side 1, side 2, this would be the first song, but on side 2, side B.
An album. What is that?
A record. A collection of songs.
Right.
Right.
All right. So next tune is Red Giant, which is, this to me is like the big, heavy Jeff Beck rocker. And it's got a really kind of screwed up Vinnie Colaiuta-esque intro that, and I'll play it in a second, Jen, I know. But I just want to explain my favorite part of the tune is where it goes from that. I don't know what we're going to hear. It's kind of like when you're on the Tonight Show and we're watching a clip. I don't know what clip this is.
Right. There's no idea what this clip is going to be.
But my favorite part of the song is where it goes from this screwed up thing and then it smooths out all of a sudden. But we keep playing the same thing. Like we're still playing this heavy riff and all of a sudden it goes from feeling really jagged to all of a sudden it feels like we're kind of in this kind of cool shuffle, right? So.
I'm sure that's not it.
Right.
That was what you meant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly there. So that is the full on, in my mind, that's all the Jeff Beck DNA right there.
I remember presenting this to Dale with that.
Yeah.
He was like, "Are you serious?"
And the rest of the group was the thing I started to mention where my friend Howard has a great phrase for things where there's no one limb doing anything very often, where he's like, it's like you're riding a bike too slow and you're just going to fall down. It was like this, a computer can do it, but a person, like, it's really hard. And then I learned it. And then I was excited about it. You guys were like, oh no, that thing you did was cooler. And I was like, no, but now I learned the hard thing.
Right.
Anyway.
So the, full disclosure, the effed up thing in the beginning was written because I was going for a specific Vinny-esque kind of layered time signature vibe. But what is it to learn that, Dale, and apply it to like real life?
Once we arrived at the part, it actually turned out to be one step easier than what it would have been if we stuck with what it had been. But yeah, it's really fun and gratifying because when I see Vinny play and he's just like his left hand is disembodied and he's doing a while the rest of his body's doing this crazy thing. I really like it. And, but yeah, it's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just weird. That's like, I didn't realize this 6/8 bluesy thing until you guys started talking about it, because there's a pivot in the middle of it that makes it so strange, and numerically it doesn't recover for a bunch of measures. That I was glad I heard you guys saying that, because it is just bum bum ba ba bum ba. I was overlooking that part as I was trying to do the math halfway through the whole signature, but anyway,
it's
the Vinny.
One of my favorite tunes too.
What you asked me, Trav, I guess the answer would be, it's challenging to, the Vinny thing is all the intricacy, but something bombastic at the same time, and you're trying to be two people, but it's fun.
Right. And where did the idea of Red Giant come from besides the sound of the song? It sounds like a red giant, Jen, but
Well, no, it does have like this lunging big thing, giant, yeah, but it also was reminding me of Star Cycle in a certain way, and like space often enters my thoughts about song titles and stuff. And then I love the chorus, how it goes into the double time and the cool melody, and I always get all excited about this part because it feels like you're in a spaceship and all of a sudden you're just shooting through space and you're trying to escape the explosion of the red giant, the sudden demise of the star. So, whatever. There's other titles here. One says Boop. That would have been one.
Boop.
boop.
Like I wrote down Boop, but I think Red Giant. And then I had written down like Deneb, which is a super white giant. Like I did all this research on, the death of stars.
But
or
you're
the
not
evolution of Star Cycle, because we did the Sorrows, that song. It also does have a little bit of a Sorrows vibe to it because of the wackiness of the drums,
right.
Right.
When you say the death of stars, though, we're not talking about Mickey Rooney or something.
No.
I don't
Anyway,
know.
I was sort of following the Star Cycle, Sorrow, Star, and then the giant, clunky thing. So yeah.
Right.
There you go.
Next tune, this is one of those obvious kind of, in my mind, Morris-esque type of influenced things.
Anthony, Boop, the sound of a dying star. That's a good one.
See, every time so many things come to mind in that joke,
Everybody's so funny here, Stephanie. Spin cycle for the next album.
Nice.
When he says "boop," the sound of a dying star, I picture Mickey Rooney guest starring in an episode of like The Roadrunner, and he's falling off the cliff, and it's like boop.
Yep.
Anyway, I don't know why Mickey Rooney is the star of the night, but
You're picking on Mickey Rooney tonight.
I like to use the really current references for the kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind
Kind of like Crystal for Kids and Merv Griffin. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna play a little bit of Majority Rules. So not a super challenging song, but it definitely has that kind of that Morse influence, especially in the intro, and then it's got kind of that Highlandery vibe through the thing that his vibe always kind of has, and it just wouldn't be a TLB record without that DNA in there. And I remember at the end of that song, there's sort of like I don't know if I want to call it a drum solo, but it's kind of a great drum break where we play that riff. And live, I think that's going to be a lot of fun because Jen and I just hold the riff down and Dale gets to go nuts over it. And he always likes accompanied drum solos because he doesn't like to just go out there and be Alex Van Halen. But if we're doing something and he can also watch us sweat at the same time, then that's his get back. Because I just saw a comment a bit ago from, who said that? Tommy. He said it sounds like Trav and Jen sit around and try and figure out ways to mess with Dale. And so that's his way to get back, Tommy, is when we play live and there's accompanied drum solos where Jen and I have to look at each other and keep the beat. Yeah. Well, Dale can do anything he wants.
Spend your life accompanying other people's solos. They can work while you do yours.
Right. And Majority Rules, in my mind, very much sounds like a title that maybe, the Dregs or Steve Morse would have come up with, but it also has this charging ahead kind of, vibe of the song. So I don't
Good
remember
time.
where you came up with that, Jen, or
You
if that
know,
was on the list.
that was just on the list. I do keep a running list of song titles, and I've always kind of liked that, and it stayed on there. And yeah, I was like, hey, what do you think of this? And it sounds sort of like a anthem of sorts. Uh, so
There is a list of stuff that, like whenever any of us comes up with an idea we think is cool, we basically send it to Jen for the list.
the song title list,
And
which
so some of that stuff we might have had some input on it, but I don't know.
yeah, I mean, that one's been on there for a long time, and just it finally found its home, its song. So I think it fits really well.
Next tune is one of my favorites. I'm really looking forward to playing this live. This is a song called Grud. I don't know what Grud is, but it sounds like this. And we'll explain it afterwards. Sorry about that. I'm making noises. So the intro of that song, which you hear a little bit of that section in the beginning of what we just played, to me is this total funky, weird Mike Keneally type thing. We just did a week's worth of dates with Mike, a dear friend of ours. And if you don't know Mike Keneally, plays with, he was Frank Zappa's guitar player and played with Steve Vai for a long time and is currently out with Devin Townsend. And that funky, weird part, and I overdubbed the guitar with a Rhodes piano, also playing the kind of quirky melody. There was even talk of maybe getting Mike to play that, but to me, it's like that song is like Mike Keneally meets the Dixie Dregs. Like the chorus is like Dixie Dregs, and the weird, kind of funky, jacked up grud section is Mike Keneally. and shout out to Jen Majura, because there's even in that clip, there's a little gap in the chorus where it goes da 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 da, and Jen was a big proponent of the gaps in listening
Nice.
to the demos of this song.
Okay.
Yay!
So,
Yeah,
but
girl.
where does one come up
Yeah,
with a
girl.
title Grud, Grud?
Well, hey Dale. First of all, is this in any kind of odd? We haven't really been.
Funny you should ask. I was just now thinking this is one of the first songs I ever just went, it's not gonna help me to count this. I'm just gonna listen to it a million times as I fall asleep. And I don't know. But I go with the Rod Morgenstein attitude of you feel it musically, but the buck stops with you as far as the count, so you should know what the numbers are. And this is one of the first ones that went, yeah, I'm just gonna listen until I have it memorized.
Right. Yeah.
So it's the first time I've done that.
All that slap stuff. It's just so. It's like one big long piece of stuff,
Yeah,
kind of. Right.
yeah, and
I, oh, do we really have to learn this?
I know.
Yes.
Before you talk about the title, I'll say real quick. I remember when you said that title and I didn't care for it, and then you said, "Well, it might be the Mike Keneally song," and my attitude was, I don't like the title unless it's the Mike Keneally song, and then I love it.
Right. Yeah. So there was another title that was being floated around for a couple of these tunes that you really didn't like, and we never did use, called
forgot,
Hot
sorry.
Bag.
Oh, yeah.
Hot Bag. Remember?
Hot
What's
Bag.
wrong
That's
with
a
me? Why
great.
am I such an old curmudgeon? Why don't I like that?
Hot Bag was a great title.
Right. Travis and I were like, Hot Bag. That's such a great title.
Let me
Instantly
expl-
It's going to be a fan favorite now. That's going to be on the next album now that we're revealing that.
Let me explain really quick. Devin, who people remember from the TLB family, who used to tour with us a lot, he actually now has a real job working at a guitar company in Nashville. But Devin, affectionately referred to as the boy, because he looks like Anthony Michael Hall in the Vacation movies, indefinitely. we love Devin, and Devin would say hip things like this. Like he would walk up and be like, "That's a hot bag."
Yeah.
He would say it completely deadpan,
Just referring to something cool, like,
like an old car would drive by or something
yeah, or yeah.
or whatever. You know, hey, that car's a hot bag.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
I went in some derogatory direction with it that I thought was not cool, but like I get it. I know it. I know why it's cool.
Right. Well, so that never got used. Sadly, Grud is another. No one's going to be particularly impressed with this. How this came out. It's another visual problem. Where in my notes, okay, so in Pro Tools, a lot of times you work in something called the grid. It's grid mode, and there's lines, and you can see what you're doing very clearly. And this somehow that got jotted down because I think we were talking about the grid and maybe doing something about it, and I just misread it again, and I'm like, Grud. And
You have the best penmanship in the band, but
I know.
your inability to read your own notes is half our titles.
But so that this song just sounded like that, so I wrote it down in big letters, Grud, because it just cracked me up.
So basically, we wouldn't have nearly as cool of titles if Jen wore her glasses more.
Right?
Yeah. One of
by
the
the
other
way,
ones was robots. Remember, we were like, it was another robots thing. So yeah, Grud is a combination of the hot bag vibe, you know, with a misreading of grid.
Mark Storm, by the way, says snap to Grud.
Right.
Mark Storm, by the way, hello, Mark.
Hi,
Hi.
Mark
Nice,
Stormer.
Stormer.
Stormer has been one of the biggest supporters of this band ever in our history as well, and he's actually gone out with us for it's been a few years, but he used to go out with us all the time and tour manage and drive. And we our first time in New York was with Mark, and he was driving the family truckster with a trailer behind it. And we took the trailer through the Holland Tunnel and got stopped by police who said, "You can't drive a trailer through the tunnel, man." So
Get this
Mark-
hot bag out of here.
get this hot bag out of here. Huge shout out to Mark.
Yes.
We love
Mark
Mark.
single-handedly saved my back during the shutdown because I was seated in one place all day, never got up because I was Zoom lessoning, and he got me this headset mic,
Nice.
so I didn't have to just stay in front of a microphone that was stationary. I could actually move around. I mean, I'm serious. I would have been injured if it wasn't for him.
And then I have to just acknowledge Stephanie said, "I'm a hot bag." And I have to say, yes, you are, Stephanie. Stephanie is the hottest bag. And for years, we've all been saying it.
That's true.
All right. Greg, let's move on. We've got two more tunes for our special guest
Ooh, look
getting
at that.
ready to leave.
Or else we're gonna I told
Only a half
everyone.
hour behind schedule.
Okay, two more songs. The Golden West,
Alright.
bass solo.
Yeah.
For the sample, I just used both solos because that's
Right.
the best part of the song, right?
Sure, why not?
So,
Steve Van Marion said tasty. Hi, Steve. He's up in Seattle. Steve used to be here at Music Motive, and he's
Oh,
a
hi,
great
Steve.
songwriter and guitar player, and he's got a new release out recently, too.
Oh, cool.
Sorry. Go ahead,
Hey,
Trav.
Steve, and there's Hala. And
Yeah.
Yeah, yay.
hi, Hala. Golden West. I mean, it's the big Golden Westish song of the album.
All right, Golden West. So I love this song too. You know, this is one of those ones that's sort of a sleeper for me. And then when I hear it, I'm like, oh man, I love that song. It reminds me a lot in just vibe wise of Golconda from
Right.
Annika. And I always just had this sort of, I always get like little movies in my head and stuff. And this one was a train robbery. So I was trying so hard to come up with like a train title or something and like how to incorporate like this little movie in my head. And Then, it's also for Travis and I reminiscent of, and not I listened to this song recently, Travis, and it's nothing like that. The Golden Quest from the Steve Morse Band. Like, that sounds nothing like that, but vibe wise, so it popped in my head. The Golden West. That for me embodied the train robbery, gold, all that stuff. So that's what happened with the title there. Sorry.
Gotcha. It's got kind of like a open plains.
Yeah, like
Epic.
horses and hats and guns and gold and
This is very
spurs.
visual, but like, sorry, Jen, hats and spurs.
Sorry.
Hats and Spurs, that's a whole different band. That's an exotic band.
So I must have gotten this title in my head early in the process than I thought, or else it's the perfect title, because the way the song just kind of restarts and rolls over and just kind of, I guess, fugues, just sort of, it doesn't, you don't really know where the melody starts and ends, and it just kind of goes. It makes me think of, like, this sounds so cheesy, but like the way wind waves will go through wheat fields.
Right.
You know? So that's literally the best. When I try to think of the song, I'm like, I don't know where anything starts or ends or what to do. I'm just going to keep playing. But I think of those waves just kind of, I don't know where they start and end. So Golden West makes sense.
Yeah. Except for in my head, I see train robbers and horses going along in the fields there. But that's whatever. Okay.
I would be remiss if I didn't use our this little feature here at least once.
Oh, gosh.
And so we have a few quotes here on this song because the big bass solo. So Dave Miranda, drummer extraordinaire.
Yes.
And then also, so Jen's got high praise here because she's also got the great Jen Majura, former guitar player from Evanescence.
Thank you, Jen.
Yep.
Yeah. So. This album was not specifically bass heavy. It was like a drum and guitar record, and we talked about that, and it's cool. I love it.
This is my favorite quote, though.
Yeah, I know.
It is a wonder. Yes. We're trying to figure it out, Greg.
He wonders. Right.
All right. Are we ready for the last tune?
Last tune. Then we can get our special guests on.
Yeah, this is a song called Will to Wait, which...
it seems like everybody's favorite tune.
This is Jen and my favorite, I think.
I mean, Dale, wait, do you have a favorite?
He loves Dreamcatcher.
Yes. Yes. I peaked in my career with Dreamcatcher.
Right.
That's a great question, Jen. There's still sort of jockeying for position in my brain, but I do love this, and I like the thought of it too, like who and what it represents, and I like the sparseness and edginess of it, and yeah, I like it. And there's some messed up drum stuff that I'll not talk as long as I do, but after you play it, I'll mention something really quick, and then yeah, I love this.
Glenn Hintzman, by the way, I would just say a shout out to him. He says Will to Wait was another immediate impression for him. This is a song that the intro very again kind of that sort of 70s Dregsy ballady compositional style, Mahavishnu-esque, but like the slow kind of churning stuff that those bands would come up with. But then it turns into this like Bakersfield groove. And that's where the title comes from. And it's a complex version of that. But I mentioned earlier, we had a friend that we kind of came up with here in San Luis Obispo, California area. And his name was Peter Will. And some people out there know who he is, local people. But he was a guy that we all thought would have been a huge, huge successful music star had he had the right support behind him and the right break. And unfortunately, he left this earth many years ago. But his music still endures in our players. And there's a little niche of people here that just thought the guy was phenomenal. And so the groove of this song is very Peter Will-esque. And the guitar style of this kind of slow, slurry, jammy, it's almost like a trucker song disguised as a fusion song in our minds.
And it wasn't like he was phenomenal virtuosically, if that's a word, I think it is. But
He was phenomenal, like Johnny Cash is phenomenal.
yeah, he just had an attitude, and he owned things harder than anybody else can own a thing. And he just
Yeah.
had such personality and integrity in a weird way, but he was edgy, and it was just, yeah, we just love who he was.
Yeah, and every show was like, is it going to stay on the rails, but
Yeah.
in the best way possible.
Yes, a huge locomotive that might go off the rails, and it's on
Yes.
the edge.
And so this is a Will to Wait, and it's really partly a tribute to the great Peter Will, who our little niche is a fan of here. Niche, it's not really a niche. Circle.
There
Our
you go.
circle.
Yeah, circle.
And then there's the Led Zeppelin acoustic section.
Yeah. After this part that has nothing to do with anything.
Another song where we took the most exotic section and the guitar solo. So all
Right.
the stuff I described was not in that clip, but
Right.
You can see how that would remind us of a guy who resembles Johnny Cash in personality.
exactly. But I will say, this song probably has the most different journeys within the song of any song on the record, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't revisit either. It's different in that it barely revisits those sections. It's more of a journey song than a coming back and playing. You know, it's got an intro that's a certain flavor, and then it moves on to a different thing, and then it starts to pick up, and then you get into these weird kind of exotic acoustic sections that you just heard that start with. And those bits to me are kind of a very Led Zeppelin-y thing. That was another kind of Jimmy Page-ish influence. And I will also let me mention that was actually written on a mountain dulcimer. I have a few of these, and I'm trying to decide how we're going to do this live, because I'm also I'm playing it on a piezo on my electric as it stands now, but it would be kind of cool to do the old school prog thing where I had like a weird instrument on a stand or something for the show.
And that was
so-
Gary Johnson who built you the mountain dulcimer.
Yes, Gary Johnson out of Arizona. And he built an acoustic one, and then he built an electric one that I have. And I wrote the part on this dulcimer playing around with it. And then it was like, okay, how do I fit this into a song? And so just real quick, just so we know what we're talking about, this bit right here. The kind of exotic Zeppelin-y thing breakdown, and then there's like some tablas on there, I think, Dale, and some I don't know. We had all kinds of weird percussion on there, and
Yeah, Jen came up with a lot of cool percussion parts. That was really neat. I was listening to that today, thinking that really added a lot. And at the time, all I could think of was, are they the right mix? Are they detracting? Are they adding the right thing? And I was like, those are great.
Jen, you play the bongos?
I think it's actually a djembe, not a tabla. We were going to use the tabla, remember? And that sounded a little too
Yep.
Oh, it's a djembe.
Just
Okay,
mentioning.
I'm no percussion expert. Percussion to me is like beating on the dashboard of the car when I'm
Right.
listening to the stereo.
Going to
But that
your concert.
Yeah.
yeah. So that
Well,
that-
that I will say, though, that title actually kind of eluded us a little bit, although we knew we wanted to use the will in it. Remember,
Yeah.
that we went
Yeah.
back and forth and round about the title. But I think what you said about the journey of the song, that's why I think Will to Wait kind of stuck, because it is the intro is this and everybody loved this song so much through mixed sound and all of that stuff that it was being considered also for the first song. And I was like, we can't start the album with like a 2-minute long.
Yeah. Right.
Anyways, the beginning, I knew right off the bat, I'm like, this is going to be the last song on the record. It's Worth the Wait was sort of what was in my head.
Yeah.
It's worth the wait, this really amazing song. And then the Wilts, that's how that all came along. Adding the Peter Will aspect, Wilt Wait. So.
Jen Majura says, djembe for the big booms.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was the big booms.
Big booms.
Okay, speaking of big booms. Probably ought to get going here because it's getting late. So let's bring on
already a long one.
the fourth member of TLB for the last like 30 years. And on every single record that we've ever made. And if we could take him to every live show, we would. But we went out with him several times. He's been on every Aristocrats tour that we did of North America with both bands. And he's been with us since 91, I think.
Yikes.
The first gig we ever did with this guy, we were opening for the Romantics. That's how old we are.
Stephanie says rhymes with dork.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the fourth member of TLB, our engineer for the last 30 years and partner with Avalon Studios when that was a thing, and just all around good dude, Kip Stork.
Hi, everyone.
Yay.
Whoop, whoop.
Hey, Kip.
Where's it? Mark Storm. Call me. Mark, call me.
Mark Storm says...
I'm going to take this opportunity to excuse myself for just one moment.
Do it.
Mark Storm, you don't have to do that. I can just do it.
Get her out of there.
Mark Storm says 4.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the chat right now.
I tend to yell it all the time.
Right. So Kip, you spent several weeks with us here in the treehouse this time.
I did.
I posted a thing on Facebook a while back. I'll re-educate people that maybe didn't see that video or realize that our studio of 25 years, Avalon Recording Studio, is no longer, right?
It's still there physically. However, my stuff isn't in there.
It's correct. Yeah, it's still a building.
The Avalon doesn't exist.
It had run its course in my mind and heart, I suppose would be the right way to put it.
Well done.
We got priced out by the landlord is what happened.
Well, that was part of it too. Extra rent always hurts, So.
But we built the studio with Kip back between, what was it, 97, 96, 97?
97, 98.
97, 98.
Yeah.
And you can find all those videos, on our YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff if you want to go back into the archives. But Kip, like I mentioned, Jen and I, the first time we ever met Kip, we were doing a gig opening for the Romantics at a club overlooking San Luis Obispo, which is now, now it's a local NBC affiliate, right? But back then it was a nightclub, and it was... when we played there, it was called, what was it?
Loco Ranchero.
Loco Ranchero.
Yeah, they had paper mache, almost life-size, hanging blue cows from the ceiling.
True story.
A pair of them. And from like 15-foot, 20-foot tall ceilings, but still there were blue paper mache cows, almost life-sized.
Right.
Hanging from the ceiling. Yeah, it was a great place.
One thing I just want to say is that Kip and we have learned so much from Kip, and Kip has learned so much from us, but it's been a mutual relationship for years, right? And I feel like, Kip had a specific style when we started working with him, and as we've kind of grown, he's grown with us, and in the early days, we had a lot more time trying to get to the point where we were sort of seeing the same picture. And then in more recent albums, you've kind of actually, you'll get there before I even tell you to. Sometimes you're kind of figuring out way more of like, Travis is going to do this, and so.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's been a melding of the minds for years now, so. I've kind of gotten used to all your layering and stuff. So there's a lot of melodies and some counter melodies and harmonies and all sorts of stuff going on with like many different instruments at the same time. So it gets really actually pretty complicated. But you pay attention to the root stuff, and then the stuff that needs to be on top will show its head. So
Not to be like too nerdy for people that, aren't engineers, but when you're dealing with, so people understand, even though our records sound like a trio, for the production aspect and the fact that we have no limitations making a record, you can do whatever you want. And then you have to worry about how to do it live later. But sometimes there's 30, 40 tracks of, keyboards, rhythm guitars, acoustic guitars, basses,
why did you
strings
put it in there?
Yeah. So
Yes. Kip's always like, why is this in
What-
there?
Well, you want those.
So how does one try and fit all that stuff together? Like, what's the approach to a band like this, say, versus like a rockabilly band where you're dealing with like a guitar, bass, and drums, and that's it?
Well, that's a trio, which is really simple to mix, But those three elements will come to the top of the mix, no matter what, right? And so with your music, there are so many tracks going on that it's like an orchestra in a way, And so you have to kind of pick which instruments want to be at what frequency, So certain things are going to lend itself to sounding a certain way. And so that's the real trick, isn't it? Is to balance all of those harmonies and unison stuff that have different tonal characters into something that makes sense and meshes, but you still can't lose the basis of what the song really is, which is a three-piece, really. At the end.
Main thing I learned from Kip, and just in my career as making music, is really notching frequencies, understanding what that means, and
Sure.
looking at like a graphic EQ and understanding what it is, and just one of the things I'll put out there, because this comes up a lot in the live situation, is bands that don't sound very good live, and I'll be a little bit arrogant and say we always sound good live. Sound good. That doesn't mean we play good, but we sound good.
Yeah, that's actually sound really good live.
Our sound is
yeah.
partly built based on working within each other.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And the reason we sound good is because some of the things we've learned from you over the years of being able to. What people don't understand is if you're dialing your instrument to be by itself, that doesn't necessarily work when you add a band to it. And so your guitar doesn't necessarily need to sound the way it would sound if you're sitting at home in a room alone and you're trying to get the ultimate guitar tone. Sometimes you have to notch frequencies and you have to make things fit within a mix. And I learned that from you, really. So
Yeah. And then you also, as a band, I think that you guys, you really, no one sticks out too much coming off the stage, so as far as what my job is when I mix with you guys, it's really easy because everything's already pretty well balanced, right? And so all I gotta do is really turn up the vocal mic and mix like that. So no, it's just a good balance of what comes off the stage when the TLD is playing. No one's out doing the other, and the drums are all proper, and it kind of just makes sense right out of the gates.
Drums are proper because you're great at drums. That's what goes the most wrong in most shows.
I'm always concerned about the proper drum.
Well, yeah, they make sense as a kit. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
shocking what happens sometimes when you're not around.
Well, I love, well, you have a strong right foot, which I think is great. You don't overplay the snare, and the toms are loud, and the cymbals aren't too much, so that's part of the sound of your drum kit is, the way I like it. There's not too much cymbal, not too much snare. Big on the kick and snare, kick and toms. Just, for me, it's great. It's good. It's easy to work. To make it sound like I think it should sound.
That's encouraging. Those are all the things I think I'm bad at, but apparently I'm trying hard enough for it to sound okay.
No, you're quite good at it. So, yeah.
Well,
Hey,
go ahead, Kip or Dale.
I actually have a question, a self-serving question that I'd like to know the answer to, but if we don't have time for it.
No, go ahead.
So, Travis, you write a lot of stuff where you'll construct like a composite voice out of 3 or 4 different sounds, right? Like
Correct.
you'll make a lead voice out of several voices, and then I'm not around sometimes when you and Kip are discussing these parts. Do you guys have to sit there? Do you have to, Kip and Travis, do you have to sit there and try to figure out how to get Kip to understand what the sound is that you're going for, so you know? Like if there's 12 sounds because there's 4 sounds making a lead voice and 3 sounds making a background voice and 3 sounds making different. Do you have to have those conversations all the time, or?
Well, yes, and I mean that's part of just saying the direction of something, and so that's back to like kind of where we're leading with this, which is the only person, and Kip is absolutely integral to the whole thing, but the only person that ever really understands that stuff inherently is Jen, as far as somebody that just knows where the shit should go. Sorry, didn't mean to drop an S-bomb. We're gonna get demonetized now, but she's so yes, you kind of have to explain it to anybody if they're not Jen, because it's just so complex. And the idea, on this record, we did a lot of that. If you listen to the leads, so much of them, especially in the choruses, is doubled with some kind of synthesizer, strings,
Violin,
electric piano,
B3s, organ,
B3s,
any kind of, yeah.
Right.
And
Sometimes if you nail it on the demo, I don't really know. I'm like, what is that actually? Because if you don't always take that time, but sometimes you'll mix it just right, and it is just this voice that I don't know what it is.
I asked that same question. What is that?
Okay.
So, but I'll always refer to Travis. Generally speaking, what wants to be the focus here? What is going on here? Because if you listen to the album really carefully, there's all sorts of stuff that's panned left and right, or maybe it's stereo or whatever. But it's not always obvious what the focus wants to be.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, you're trying to make it's an instrumental band, right? So you're trying to make a big sort of pseudo vocal melody. You're trying to, you're trying to make something that's doesn't necessarily have to sound like anything in particular. And one of those things, the way that came about was when I was growing up listening to Steve Morris. He would do tons of that layering, and he wouldn't even think about it. He would just say, well, I ran through this amp and put this guitar here and put this guitar here and then put a fiddle here and put a piano here, and just to be different. That's the key, is he would always say, just to be different, and so that really stuck with me of, I don't even necessarily have a game plan sometimes. I'm just pretending I do. But I know what the melody is going to be, but I don't know what the voice for it is going to be. I'm just trying to put something organic together that sounds big. And I don't really care if it sounds like this or this, as long as it sounds good.
And that was the most interesting thing that happens. You saying that makes me realize, because once in a while, pretty deep into the mixing, you and Jen will have a difference of opinion about, I'll realize you have differences of what that sound is trying to be. That's fascinating to me.
Well, and the song will morph too.
Right. Yeah. And then Trav's not,
yeah.
No, I like, sometimes you do know exactly what you want it to be. And sometimes you're like, yeah, maybe you're right. Like maybe that is anyway, that's interesting to watch too.
Well, and I definitely have gotten very loose with that over the years, where the stuff I really hang on to is more quality control, but as far as the flavor drifting, I'm pretty okay with that, right?
We've down over the years.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say, me and Kip together are like, no.
What are you doing?
But like on this album, for instance, I used a lot of different sounding guitar instruments and a lot of different sounding. I used that Zemaitis acoustic on some stuff, and I used things that I hadn't used before. This is the first album where I've actually mic'd up and recorded a real organic acoustic guitar. Even the acoustic duets that we've done, Jen, have always been a piezo plugged into the board. right?
Right.
So it's never had that kind of woody, organic, again, as a reference, the
Right.
real, actually breathing acoustic guitar and acoustic instruments layered. That's something that I hadn't really done before because of, honestly, convenience, where you sit there and you can plug into a little recorder in your apartment when we, didn't have
Yeah.
facilities to make noise. And so, yeah, I was really trying to kind of go further with this record and make it sound more organic and more better, more better, for lack of better description. But anyway, so to answer your question, Dale, of do I have to talk about that with Kip? Yes, we do, but it doesn't necessarily have a specific plan. It's just you start looking at stuff and going, well, if I don't have a plan, he'll start putting things where he thinks they ought to be, and then maybe I start going, well,
Okay,
it should
right.
maybe be a little more like this.
If you have a reaction to it, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
over the years, Kip has gotten really, really good at knowing right off the bat. Like 20 years ago, he was like, "What is this?" And now he's like, "Oh yeah, I
Yes.
know where that's supposed to go."
That's absolutely
right.
true. Yeah,
Oh, that's just a little bit funny. I would agree. No, I would definitely agree with that.
yeah.
Or better yet, why is this?
Why?
Why is this?
Why?
I'm always like, "Just don't worry about it. Just put it somewhere, dude."
Right, exactly.
Right. But that's the thing. The why is it doesn't necessarily have to be a focal, but it does make a subtle difference. Adding those things to, even if they're in unison, creates a thing that's different. It's a different flavor, different characteristic.
Yeah, and a
Right.
more dense wall or whatever. You want it dense or you want it thin. That's
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
And I'm thin enough naturally, so.
Kip, did you feel, because of all of the changes with this record, and we worked in a totally different room and scenario, how was the experience for you overall based on all of the other records which have been
I
in at Avalon?
loved this.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, no, this was great. It wasn't at my place,
Right.
and so it was really cool hopping on my motorcycle, riding over, going into your space,
Yeah.
and just walking in and stuff is already set up. It's ready to go. I just push play. Where'd we leave off? How does, let me just hear the song, everything. It was great. And then, doing the work and then riding back home or going off to my other job or, whatever it is.
I
Yeah.
sensed that from you, like
Yeah.
when it worked.
So if anybody doesn't know, on Travis's shot right here, that's the Treehouse studio right there. So I brought my my monitors and we used a mix down rig and it was great. I loved it.
Good.
I better say bye to Holly, by the way. Holly is taking off.
Hi, Holly.
Thanks for lasting this long.
Thanks. Yeah.
I was going to say, in response to Kip, the last time that we didn't do something at Avalon, he was sitting on a bucket in my parents' garage on a Samick mixing console.
Was
And
that? No. Well, I mean, there was that.
I know what
That
you're going
was-
to say.
Also, what was that?
Steakhouse.
Well, that's true. That's different.
Hardware. We took out the door hardware to a garage.
Oh, that was at
Oh, right.
Cucaracha Court.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
But that was before the thing in the garage. That was in my parents' garage. That was before that, actually.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, Kip worked with Jen and I 30 years ago we had a different drummer, and he had a college house that he lived in with some guys, and that was that house, that first place that he ever recorded us.
Yeah, he ran a snake down the hall and through a doorknob
Yeah.
into the garage.
Yeah.
And then, and then I put a little mixing board in a bedroom and put up a bunch of mics and recorded a DAT.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah, that. Oh, wait.
Same.
Well, so before it starts getting too late, it's about
I know, we're running
quarter
out.
till now. So we had one other person working on this. So Kip was in here for getting tones, mixing, finding
Months.
space for everything for months, and then after that, we wanted to really do a proper mastering job on this record this time. And so this is kind of a surprise guest because he wasn't announced and nobody knew he was going to be on here. But this is guy that Jen and I have kind of known him sort of for about 25 years. Our first correspondence, he did a review on our record, I think. And he's an incredible drummer from Long Island who is, got a band called Magic Elf, which if you check out their record, Heavy Metal, it's ridiculous. And we had this little kind of I don't want to say it was a sparring thing, but like we came out with our first record and he had emailed us a really kind email saying how great he thought it sounded and what did you guys do to make it sound so great and tell me, some of your studio techniques and stuff. And then they came out with Heavy Metal and it was like, oh, the gloves are off. These guys just crushed us. They crushed us. And so here we are all these years later and we're taking those skills and putting them to work for us, but helping with the message. No. But this is an incredible drummer and a great engineer in his own right.
Incredible set of ears.
Incredible set of ears. This is the Dave Miranda from Scatterbrain and Magic Elf.
Wow.
And I see Vicky Mazzoni says Heavy Metal is a great record.
Yeah.
Magic Elf is awesome. I see a lot of comments starting to come up. So, and actually, we were just somewhere, Dave, where somebody came up and was like, "Oh, it was when we played in San Diego," and somebody came up and said to you, "You're the drummer for Magic Elf? I'm a huge fan." And
That was Andrew Banks.
Right. And everybody was freaking out and he was like calling people, "Bring my records."
Right.
So, but such a help, honestly, Dave, and kind of coming in on the back end of this and making so as far as taking what we had on the production side and kind of post-production going in and sort of polishing stuff up, as it were. And Jen I mentioned earlier, Jen's the set of ears that I always trust. I can actually walk away from Jen's set of ears and I don't have to micromanage. And so Jen was also a huge part of that. But from your perspective, Dave, what's it like to come in and work on this record? And have you done a lot of stuff like that before for a band that that's a separate project where the project came to you virtually done and here, master this, do what you think needs to be done and make it sound great?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be here. You guys are incredible. Yes, I've been a big fan of the band for over 20 years. And this has just been incredible. Kip. Hi, Kip. Amazing work. I mean, firstly, the band, amazing work. Kip, you're mixing everything incredible. I mean, I could not say it better than you have just said. How you assessed and approached and worked on the music, on the album. But yes, in terms of doing other work, I haven't done too many other projects other than Magic Elf in terms of mixing and mastering. But I'm very familiar with instrumental rock fusion progressive kind of stuff, and it was a lot of fun. Just amazing work. When you're working on music that just sounds great, that just inspires you, it's just a lot of fun, and it flows very smoothly. Yeah, there's a lot of work, but I
was going to say, one of the things about you, Dave, that I know, which was very helpful, is I know you're a very detail-oriented guy, very particular, and that was part of the idea of getting you involved on that end is just somebody that's meticulous. And it's hard to find people that are as meticulous as this bunch, but you're definitely in that ballpark, right? So it really helps a lot, though, for somebody that's going to dig in at that level. And so I appreciate you putting the time in. You put a lot of time in.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much there in the music, all the parts, all the layers, and all the tracks, everything. There's just so much there, And yes, definitely, it was a lot of fun to go through and really dig in and tweak all the little aspects, and just really get it to shine in the end. I mean, it was over. Everything is great, But in the mastering, obviously, it's just about kind of coming in with a fresh perspective and just, just tweaking things and trying to just get it to that place. And of course, all your feedback and making sure everybody was happy with everything. But I think it sounds amazing. The record, the compositions, the playing, Dale, your drumming, everything. Just
you. It was.
I remember at a point when we were working on this, Dave specifically kind of sitting back in a moment and going, wow, I'm hearing like all of this stuff that I've never heard before on TLB records that were there, the layers and stuff. But when you're in the projects and you're working on it, you get to really see the inside skeleton of everything. And I just remember you being so kind of fascinated by all of that stuff that you could kind of poke around in there and hear that
yes,
stuff.
It was fun hearing the records of TLB for the last, say, 25 years and all that stuff, and then to finally look at a whole mix and all the tracks, the multi-track thing, and be able to just be like, wow, and just solo stuff and be like, man, you appreciate it that much more. But in the end, for the end listener, it's all about bringing it together, which of course you guys and Kip did amazingly well, and make music. At the end of the day, the listener just wants to enjoy the music. They're not worried about all the technical things. But yeah, it was fun though, indeed, to go in there and be like, oh wow, this and that, and oh man, that's so cool, and
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun, and I thank you guys for that opportunity.
Well, go ahead, Dale.
That's such an honor that like it would be a delight to go in and see like 97 tracks or whatever that it's interesting instead of just a burden, to sort through. I was going to say I was really impressed by how much, once something is recorded and mixed, it seems like it's hard you're really limited in how much you can shape it after that. And I just remember being so impressed by how much you were able to just push it along into the right direction in so many ways. That's the best way I can say it.
This record is kind of it's everything. All the elements of our other records are there, but it's everything that we needed to kind of fill the spaces has been filled, and it's kind of a dream team here. And so as the guy whose name is on the record, I just have to say that everybody, first of all, thank you all so much for doing such an incredible job and putting so many hours into this and making it such a great record. And it's a record I think everybody can be proud of. But also, and I've mentioned this before behind the scenes, TLB is a little bit like the mob, and none of you can leave now. You're all, everybody is part of this thing. It's like this dream team. Everybody knows their parts, and so this is. This is going to kind of have to stay this little TLB family for another 25 years, and I hope you're all good with that.
Dude, I was dead before then. What are you talking about? Oh my God.
I got to put up a comment from Jen Majura too here that I just think is really sweet. But
yeah.
Aw. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
And Jen, too, from afar, had a lot of super helpful opinions and insight into so many things. She was here for some of the mastering stuff, and remember that? And
and for somebody that the thing that we didn't have perspective on in what you're talking about right now, Jen, is we're not a very commercial band, and we've never really compared ourselves to commercial music so much. And Jen comes from an angle of understanding what those kind of productions are. And so it's cool that, like you said, to have that input of somebody that's bringing what we do, trying to get what we do into a sonically relevant space with what's out there and what's competitive these days, but not ruining it and making it not sound like an organic TLB product,
Right.
I hate the word product. But creation, album. So yeah, it was nice to have a perspective of somebody that actually understands production and can listen to it objectively and say, it sounds competitive, but it doesn't sound like you've ruined it. It doesn't sound so overly a lot of music these days is so overly compressed and crushed and almost to the point of distortion, and we're always kind of battling those sort of things and trying to figure out how to deal with them. You don't want to be listening to, I'm going to actually say something current. I'm not going to say an iTunes playlist. I'm going to say a Spotify playlist. But you don't want to be listening to a Spotify playlist and hear be on this list of songs, and all of a sudden ours sounds so out of the ballpark with everything that you've been listening to that it doesn't really fit, right? So but you also don't want to squash the life out of it. You want it to sound like the three of us in a room just on fire.
Yeah.
And so I think everybody. What's that?
You just want it to sound better than everything else.
Yeah. Right. Well,
always.
Yeah. Well, as I said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll get demonetized. But as Branford Marsalis used to say, there's no better feeling than kicking the shit out of all the other bands. And I've talked about that before. Of course, we know our limitations. We don't think, you're always like second guessing yourself, and you're always like beating yourself up after a bad show and all that kind of stuff. But when you're presenting something, or when you're walking on stage to play a live show, you kind of have to have that confidence in order to put it out there. And that's kind of, I think, what Branford was saying. But I totally feel confident with everything that we did, and I'm really proud of it. And I couldn't have done it without any of you guys. So I really appreciate everybody's efforts.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, and with that, unless I don't know if anyone else has anything else, we are literally like almost 2 hours, almost. We've got like another 2 minutes, and I think everybody on the East Coast is going to turn into a pumpkin.
Yeah. I do want to say too, also to everybody here, thank you, Kip and Travis and Dale and Dave. Everybody did work really hard on this record, and we still haven't celebrated, Kip. We wanted to take you out to dinner, and we got to do that. So, thank you.
Go on a ride, man.
Worked hard.
Yeah. Is there still some bubbly wine in your cupboard, Trav?
There might be.
We did, just for the people out there. By the way, Vicky says tour with a question mark. Coming, Vicky. We're working on tour dates for. There's a couple things in discussion. TLB you will probably see in the fall. You will see a few things with me before that. And for anyone locally in the San Luis Obispo County area, just putting this out there, next weekend, Friday and Saturday of St. Patrick's Day weekend, I will be at the San Luis Obispo Libertine trying to play through some of these new songs and having some special guests sit in and jam. It's one of my little solo shows. It's really more of a fun thing. But if anyone's around and wants to come hang at that, I'll be playing some of this new material. I'll be playing, some old Jeff Beck standards and things like that with friends and having some fun. So come check that out. But touring is on the way. We are working on that, and we will get that info out there as soon as we have any answers. We're just waiting for answers.
Answers.
We're asking for a joke, Jen. I don't know if you have one or not. Sorry if you don't.
No, I do.
Oh, okay.
A duck walks into a convenience store, says to the merchant, "Give me some lip gloss." The merchant says, "Cash or charge?" "Just put it on my bill."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, remember. Yeah, good one. Yikes.
That's a Christopher Walken joke. I tried to do it in a Christopher Walken way, and that was terrible.
Wow.
First name, Mr. Middle name, period. Last name, T.
Oh, you're going to get.
Okay, fine. All right. Goodbye.
All right, folks. Thank you for coming, everybody.
New
Thank you.
album.